Can I begin with you? Your thoughts on perhaps not so much the decision, I'm sure you were in line with consensus, but yes, more on what he said afterwards. Lowering of growth, I don't know if he lowered enough for you.
Well, I think we're probably in the same region. You know, certainly
1.3, 1.4%.
We're probably looking at about 1.3, but it could even come out close to 1%. A real worry because, you know, South Africa's economy has seen a really weak downward trend since about 2012. And of course, you know, not turning around substantially. Last year, seeing 0.8% year-on-year growth. You know, really abysmal. And of course, I was just having a look at what Moody said last year this time when they gave us our credit rating country review. And they were pinning, you know, the concern about the weakness of growth and saying they expected to recover quite substantially last year, which it failed to do. Yeah. You know, so I think these are worries for credit rating agencies, but more importantly, worries for South Africans, worries from an employment perspective. Yeah. You know, this is not an economy that's generating much in terms of growth. In terms of jobs.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it sounds to me like we should be scared about that Moody's decision tomorrow.
Well, I think Moody's looks at more than just that. So they also spent a lot of time last year discussing the change in regime, you know, the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa became president of South Africa, expectations of really good governance, looking at the deterioration in many institutions. You know, obviously you're talking today about appointment of a new commissioner at SARS. The bottom line essentially being, will Moody's believe that enough has actually been done to turn things around now, and is enough in place to engender a much stronger outlook going forwards, or will they continue to have concerns and feel that, you know, we're not doing as well as we should have done? Our personal point of view is that they're probably not going to downgrade us from a credit rating perspective, but they're going to downgrade the outlook from stable to negative, implying that within an 18-month period we could get a credit rating downgrade in actuality if we don't make good and repair a lot of these concerns they have.
Which is going to be difficult in an election year. Joseph, from a market perspective, I don't know if the market reacted to anything at all that the governor said in his speech or indeed the decision. All I see, the gold counters bleeding money today.
So it was certainly expected that it was going to hold rates for now. There's no doubt that there might be a little bit of inflationary pressures that might come through. We thought it might come down a little bit, and obviously bottom. You saw the PPI coming up to about 4.9 from is it 4.7 from 4.1. So certainly, I think there are a couple of issues that are still negative for SA. We continue to talk about electricity. So if there's no power, you know, whether to do the industries or the mines, certainly your production is going to come there. You know, last week there was a little bit of surprise when we saw that, you know, there was, I think, 87,000 jobs that were created, and we're hoping that, you know, that will continue. They need to be very cautious because of the volatility of the rand. You know, 14.67 right now, just coming from 14.28 2 days, a day ago. So that volatility is not good for the economy, because also oil prices are not good. Although Donald Trump's statement made the price come down by $1 per barrel.
Indeed, Donald Trump in the markets. I actually think there are times when I think this man is manipulating the markets for his own electoral purposes. Quickly, before we go to a clip from the governor of the central bank, I wanted to know from you, listening to Titombowe, can't we get it from the south? Listening to Kganyago, and I also want you to respond very quickly to that as well. Did you get a sense of a man who is speaking from an economy that's not creating jobs, and that's also in crisis because you have got power cuts and you've got all sorts of problems? This economy is not growing at all.
I think he came across as very aware of all of these issues and concerns.
Did he?
But look, I mean, the point really is that they never were going to do very much before the credit rating decision. They pretty much had to keep rates unchanged. What happens if there's no decision at all? I mean, last year, November, Moody's didn't even bother to let us know what their country review was. They just gave it a skip.
Said yesterday.
They gave it a skip. And, you know, the point really is, you know, will they give us even a downgrade or nothing? And, of course, what happens with Brexit? You know, a lot of uncertainty. So I think delaying the decisions until May, when the next MPC meeting is.
Absolutely. Your thoughts?
Well, basically the statement, there's no change. It's becoming almost like a routine where there's no surprises. But certainly, I think the issue of the growth, I think, is sticking. The fact that we're still failing to break above 1%, I think is a worry for him. We might be optimistic that we might get 1.3, 1.5, but I'm close to 1%. I think that's where we're going to go, because there's nothing that is telling that the economy is going to pump.
Yeah.
So you have also drought that is affecting. I mean, I just came from the northwest. Maize is drying, the same in Witbank. So there might be some few challenges as long as the food pressures don't come through, coupled with the electricity shortages and fuel prices.
Absolutely. So earlier on, the governor actually spoke about this issue around Moody's and the decision that will be made tomorrow. Let's listen in.
Under the most adverse of the scenarios, it's expected that such a downgrade could lead to a protracted decline in GDP and lead to a situation where you have got an L-shaped kind of decline, which means that the GDP declines and stays at the bottom for a long time before it starts to recover, that the currency would depreciate, and because the currency has depreciated, you have a rise in inflation, second round effects kick in. So you have got a combination of recessionary conditions and rising inflation, and add to that rising borrowing costs for both the government and for South Africans, which also feed themselves through into growth.
So that's the governor addressing the issue of the worst case scenario. Should Moody's downgrade the rating? Not even talking about the outlook. But getting back to the Moody's debate, the expectation is that there might be a downgrade of the outlook rather than the rating itself. Peter Atad Montalto yesterday throwing a little bit of a spanner, if you like, suggesting, as you are now saying, that there might be no statement at all. How likely, though, is that? And what would be the impact? And what would it mean from a market perspective?
So I think that probability is probably quite low, because in November they probably didn't feel there was enough new information to warrant a full country review. And now there probably is enough new information. Certainly there needs to be an update between then and now. A whole year has passed. I think the markets actually are probably fairly split at the moment between a downgrade or just a drop down in the outlook. So I think things are becoming a bit more concerning than they perhaps were a month or two ago in terms of this credit rating decision, partly because of what's been happening with load shedding. If load shedding were to ramp up again this year, very detrimental to economic growth. And of course we're talking about the terrible effects of drought on South Africa, but really just an economy continuously failing to gain momentum and really just to pick up in terms of the economic growth front. You mentioned being an election year, a lot of uncertainty as well. I think all of that's going to concern the credit rating agency, but perhaps talk to the fact that they may well want to wait till after the election before they were to give us a dramatic move, and perhaps maybe that's why looking at the outlook rather instead.
And from a market's perspective, Joseph, it doesn't look like there's going to be any money coming into this market. I mean, the bond market has been the better performer this year, and it doesn't look like there's any reason for someone to be focusing or perhaps getting money into the South African market, is there?
Well, you just had basically
from outside, at least.
From the finance minister, that is very worried. But also, I like the fact that he's very stern that we have to do certain things right. I mean, he's talking about the annual bonds that we have to collect money. So
it's almost like he's not a member of the ANC, isn't it?
100%. And this is what I like about it, because when you kind of retired, you've got nothing to lose. So Tito Mbowene's got nothing to prove. But what he wants is something that will work for South Africa, which might not be popular with all of us and certainly the trade unions. But I think the key issue for me is the fact that you've got a strong finance minister who has got very strong opinions. Then you've got a new SARS commissioner. And I think what the president tried to do there is to make sure that he gives more confidence to Moody's, which has been very kind to us, I think, in terms of delaying their decision and so on, compared to the others. But certainly, I think, the wait and see, as Annabel said, to say, let's give them a little bit more time to see what's going to come through. They might say, let's just wait for the elections, which is really almost a month and 2 weeks away, to see what decisions it's going to make from a governance perspective. But I think it's going to be very tough, I think, for SA. And if there's no downgrade, it will be positive for the market, I think.
Quickly, do you think Tito is coming back?
Sorry, you said you should jump in. I think the market's actually factored quite a lot of a downgrade in. So I think if we don't get one, yes, we could see the Rand rally very substantially next week.
Absolutely. Is he coming back, Tito?
He might have been a stopgap measure, but I don't think he's going to come back.
You don't think it's going to come back? Do you think he's coming back?
In terms of?
Tito, as finance minister?
Why would he go?
Good question.
I think the issue really is succession planning. Certainly he is good, in terms of what he wants to achieve and what he thinks the needs.
Should he come back? Let me rephrase it.
I think he should come back.
But
I think from a succession politically, from ANC perspective, there's lots of recycling.
Yeah. Quickly, so the governor, maybe I misheard him, but did he say that there was still one more interest rate increase this year, even after the Fed said we are not going to be increasing any rates this year?
Look, I think one shouldn't read too much into it because they've got a quarterly model which actually produces an expectation, if you will, of what they should do with interest rates, given a whole number of economic variables and factors they feed into it. It doesn't mean they're going to do it. They just talk about what these models suggest to them. So I don't think they're giving us any prediction at all. I think they're just giving us a sense of, where the model is showing an indication today. But, that changes in a few months' time as well.
Absolutely. And it should change. I hope it does change. Annabel Bishop, thank you. Joseph, thank you.